From its earliest battles in 1939, World War II took the lives of many soldiers and civilians. It was a devastating time for the United States. President Roosevelt openly declared war on Japan after the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. That the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Charles Foster Kane is...
Sure, he started the war. But do you think if it hadn't been for Mr. Kane, the United States would have the Panama Canal?
Charles Foster Kane is nothing more or less than a communist.
Kane, governor. Listen, when the voters of this state and Mrs. Kane learn what I found out about Mr. Kane and a certain little blondie named Susan Alexander, he couldn't be elected dog catcher. I'm going to skin Mr. Charles Foster Kane alive.
I'm going to marry him next week at the White House.
It might be a good idea for you to disappear from Casablanca for a while. There's a free French garrison over at Brazzaville. I could be induced to arrange a passage.
My letter of transit? I could use a trip. But it doesn't make any difference about our bet. You still owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses? Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
On December 18th, 1941, just 10 days after America officially entered the war, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt appointed Lowell Mellett as coordinator of government films, thus recognizing Hollywood's role in supporting the war effort.
We must be vigilant, American patrol.
The motion pictures industry became one of the most salient means of promoting truth to the American public about war efforts, particularly those issues or ideas the government deemed critical. The government believed mass media had the power to influence people and saw radio and film as ideal vehicles for disseminating propaganda messages. In June of 1942, President Roosevelt created the Office of War Information, or the OWI, with a film branch specifically established as a federal department. The Government Information Manual for the motion pictures industry was distributed that same month. The manual suggested the types of footage that would allow the message to be clear, including the fight for survival, fight for the 4 freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of want, and freedom from fear. How each of these freedoms affected daily life. The OWI Bureau of Motion Pictures was charged with the responsibility of displaying on screen the benefits of the democratic process. The manual reads, "We must emphasize that this is a people's war, that we must hang together or we shall all hang separately."
When the Yanks raise the stars and stripes on Iwo Jima.
As part of the manual, there was a definition of who the real enemy was, and how only through being adequately informed could the American public be immune to rumor. The films were to dramatize war production, the essentiality of the industrial worker, how people could contribute by working harder, the goals of production, the meaning of idle machinery, and the need for speedy conversion of factories to the war effort. With the support of the American government, film became a tool for practical, immediate, short-term effects for the benefits of communication administrators in advertising, public relations, and government information campaigns. Given the rise in the role of film in society, motion pictures became a medium for helping youth to navigate through the effects of the war.
These are America's future citizens, the kids they are fighting for all over the world. These are the boys and girls to whom we must look for leadership in our post-war democracy. These are America's hope for the future. But as the twig is bent, the trees incline. These were the boys and girls of yesterday, kids whose fathers and brothers fought for them in the First World War. They, too, might have become good American citizens, but instead enemies of society. Behind every hardened criminal is the shadow of a youthful lawbreaker. Into the pattern of every major crime is woven a story of parental neglect, of misguided youth. Just as the twig is bent, the trees incline.
Juvenile delinquency rose to an all-time high. In 1943, they stole 65% of all the cars stolen. They committed 55% of all the burglaries, 39% of all the robberies, 37% of the sneak thievery, 30% of the malicious destruction by fire, and 13% of all the murders.
Children of all ages are feeling the effects of war, and impressionable young minds are too often being influenced into wrongdoing. Smaller children, left to their own devices, are following the example of older children and learning habits and practices far too old for their years. School-age children, without supervision, are playing hooky from school and spending their time on the streets, in theaters, and other places of amusement.
The impact of the war on youth was immense. Living in America during the war was a difficult time.
In any event, my mother went into the bottle. She became an alcoholic. She was terrified because it turned out that the people in those days realized we had no money because my father had no job. And in those days, there was no food shelters. There was no public anything. There was no help. You were on your own to get food. Well, the authorities came by and knew that my brothers and I were not eating. So they took us to this little shelter. And I was 3.5 years old. And I remember screaming and yelling and not wanting to go in there, nor did I understand why I was being left there. In any event, there were air raids because the German submarines actually came on Long Island and those places, and they had sirens going and lights and whatever, and we would be awakened in the middle of the night, and I'd have to get off my cot, and we'd go down the stairs and out into the playground that was fenced in, and it would be cold, and everybody would be scared because it meant that we could be bombed and whatever. We didn't know. So fear was really evident to me. I don't know that I knew fear before then, but I certainly knew fear then in this shelter. All of a sudden, a lady came and she said, "Catherine, get your things, we're going someplace." And in those days, people got paid to take children in who were orphaned or didn't have money. So I went to this house and the lady left me there, and I didn't know these people. I had no idea who they were. They were strangers, and here I am 3.5, 4 years old, and I have no idea where my mother and father are, and so I'm in fear and wondering where they went and where's my brothers. And so my life began in a very stressful way. They had some children of their own. They were older. Nobody abused me. I would eat. They would make you eat things you didn't want in those days, and that didn't feel good, but you did what you had to do. That's what everyone does when they're little. Anyway, long story short, guess what? The lady comes back in the black suit and the briefcase, and she said, "Guess what, Catherine? You have to get your things. We're going someplace else." So she takes me to yet another town, even further away from my mother and father. Even worse. Now I feel like I'm going out into the black night and I'm never going to find my mother and father or my brothers. And fear enters in and I think, well, I wonder what I did wrong. Right away, we always think, what did I do wrong? And I began to think I must have done something wrong. Those people don't want me anymore. And I don't know where my mother and father are. Yet another house. Yet another, as a 4-year-old little child trying to adapt.
I'm past the stage of doll and carriage. I'm not the age to think of marriage. I'm too old for toys, and I'm too young for boys. I'm just an in-between.
Before you were just a child and then you'd go to work like an adult. But when youth stopped working, there was all of a sudden this second stage of life, and young people had a lot of time on their hands and they were getting into trouble. So all of a sudden youth became a kind of social problem. And forever after, adults have been trying to figure out what to do with them. In America, youth was evolving as a democratic consumer, and ultimately the teenager was an American invention at the end of World War II. Germany had a different model. Youth were regimented and militarized. Hitler is very key to this story because he both empowered youth to be at the center of his political movement, but of course destroyed them and sacrificed them.
In 1904, G. Stanley Hall coined the term adolescence. During the World War II era, Jean Piaget was constructing his theories on stage development.
J'aimerais dire d'abord deux mots de l'idée centrale de notre épistémologie génétique, parce qu'elle est presque toujours mal comprise. Les uns me prennent pour un empiriste, et même pour un néo-behavioriste, comme l'a fait Berlin, parce que je soutiens que la connaissance part de l'action exercée sur les objets. Or, une action sur les objets, c'est pas du tout la même chose que tirer la connaissance des objets eux-mêmes. Il y a donc là une première confusion. Les autres me trouvent au contraire néo-maturationnistes ou même innéistes, étant donné que je fais appel à l'action du sujet. Mais ils oublient que l'action du sujet, c'est justement une action sur les objets qui a par conséquent interaction et pas action à sens unique. Autrement dit, je ne suis ni empiriste ni innéiste, mais je suis constructiviste. C'est-à-dire que je pense que la connaissance est affaire de continuelle construction nouvelle par interaction avec le réel et ne sont pas préformées. Il y a créativité continuelle. J'aimerais donc montrer en quoi la connaissance n'est pas préformée, ni dans les objets, ni dans le sujet, mais qu'il y a toujours auto-organisation et par conséquent une continuelle construction et reconstruction.
Based in this concept of structuring and restructuring knowledge, and that delinquency was a process of social interaction, intervention methods for juvenile delinquency were developed. These interventions focused on parent-child interaction, poverty, modeling behavior, and community clubs. Motion pictures were used as a method of delivery for ideas.
The first step in planning for the boy's future is to become acquainted with him, to find out about his interests, his ambitions, his feelings about himself. At the same time, he begins to win the boy's respect and friendship. He must find a way to change Johnny's attitudes, to make him want to do the things which will bring him greater satisfaction than he has found in misbehaving.
In a world at war, as in peace, it is every parent's duty to equip the younger members of the family for the post-war task ahead. It is more important today than ever before to maintain a normal home life. No parent can escape the responsibility of guiding the next generation to maturity. If you must be away from home all day, place your children in a community care center, kindergarten, or elsewhere, in the charge of competent, understanding supervisors. Know your children's companions. If you move to a new neighborhood, find out with whom your small children are playing and meet their parents. Raise your children to respect the law rather than to fear it, and to regard the policeman as their friend. Teach growing boys and girls the true value of money. Have them start their own savings accounts and invest part of their allowance in war stamps. Show them how a systematic saving program will help them attain the things they want and provide for their future security. Encourage your children to read good literature by subscribing to wholesome magazines and by having them join your local lending library. Help them find hobbies, amusement, and entertainment in the home. Join your local parent-teacher association. Attend the meetings regularly and participate in its activities. Get acquainted with your children's teachers and check with them frequently to make sure your boys and girls are attending school regularly and on time. Help keep your older sons and daughters out of trouble by encouraging them to bring their friends to your home. Insist on meeting your daughter's dates and learn something about their backgrounds and associations. Whatever your religious faith, train your children to attend church services regularly and set an example by going with them as much as possible. As parents, you can render no greater service to your country than by providing a wholesome, normal home life for your children. Give them the parental guidance and supervision they need to become good American citizens, able to take their places as leaders in the new world that will be theirs. His education forms the common mind, just as the twig is bent, the trees incline.
Multiple films on juvenile delinquency were created and screened on behalf of the OWI, including films with content about a seduction resulting in pregnancy, stolen cars and joyrides, murder, and even attempted suicide. Though the impact of film about delinquency during World War II is not easily quantifiable 70 years later, the effects of the intervention strategies depicted had great influence on the lives of children and can be qualified at the individual level. The messages were portrayed on screen and had the potential to influence sociocultural strategies used in society.
Now I'm 8.5 years old. I've been gone from my family, out in the starry world, never to see them again. And I would pray to Jesus continually, could you please take me back to my mother and father and brothers, please, please. And I would pray so earnestly. Well, as life would have it, this lovely couple who had older children that were nice people, I enjoyed being at their home the most because they were loving. They said, guess what today is? I said, what? They said, your father and your mother and brothers are coming to get you today after church. Hello. Oh my God. I couldn't begin to express when I saw my father's broken down jalopy outside. There was a broken down old jalopy that was noisy, and I looked, and there he was. And there was my mother, and there was my two brothers in the back seat. It was a sunny day. It was gorgeous. And I said, thank you, Jesus and God. Thank you. Thank you for answering my prayers. Oh my God. My life began at 8.5 years old.
He was a famous trumpet man.
out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand. Because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a toot to the other toot. He blows it 8 to the bar. In boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing rhythm. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.